what's up? My name is Katie and welcome back to my channel. April was a great month for me, and you know, it did rain a lot, so hopefully these April showers will lead into some May flowers. But let's get to talking about the books that I read this month. And April was my birthday month. I did a whole birthday video in honor of turning 24, and it was just so great. And I felt like I read some books that really are some new favorites, so I can't wait to talk about them. First up, we have A Curse So Dark and Lily by Bridget Kemmener. This is an autographed copy that I got at my local indie bookstore. I have this bookmark, this print that I got from Fairy Loot, and I don't have the Fairy Loot edition because I gave it to Angela from Blonde Books for her collection, because this book means a lot to her, and I'll elaborate more on that in a second. I am just really excited about this book. I wasn't sure at first if I was going to pick it up because it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and Beauty and the Beast wasn't like my favorite Disney movie or anything like that, but this was a Beauty and the Beast retelling done right. Harper Lacey is a girl struggling with the pressures of life. Her long gone father, dying mother, and brother wrapped up in trouble, not to mention her cerebral palsy, which has people underestimating her at every turn. Her life completely changes when she is transported to the world of Emberfall, where Prince Ren is under a curse. He must repeat the autumn of his 18th year over and over again until he gets a girl to fall in love with him. The catch, he slowly transforms into a beast as the season progresses. Powerful forces are standing against Emberfall, and it will take more than just a broken curse to save them. This book was 5 out of 5 stars for me. I loved it so much. Please go check out Angela's video on disability rep in literature. It's such a great video that explains why having a character with cerebral palsy in a fantasy story is such a good example for the community, and why it was so well done in this book. I think that she says it perfectly. I will of course link that down in the description and somewhere up in the cards. I never know like which side to point to, so like one of these sides. I think this book is an example of what happens when a retelling is done very, very well. It's close enough to the source material but kind of takes its own spin on it that really makes it stand out in a unique way, and we get to dive into the questions that the original story kind of left gaps in, and like, you know, what happens to the citizens of this land that this prince that's cursed rules over, and what happens to the people that live in the castle, and the ramifications of having a curse that can only be broken by two people falling in love, and also kind of like the pressures of having a curse that you like have to fall in love with someone. We get two perspectives, Harper's and Ren's, and their voices were really distinct, and I think that's because Harper is from our world, so she talks like a normal teenager would talk, and Ren is from this fantasy world, so he has a more formal and stiff language as princes in fantasy worlds tend to have, and it was really cool to see them play off of each other, with her talking like we talk and him talking in his like super fancy way. And it did set apart their chapters because you could automatically tell who was speaking. I just adore Harper as a main character. She has such a sense of strength, and she doesn't let anything stop her, especially having CP. And it's not like a selling point for the story, it is just something that is a part of her and something that she deals with, and I think that is so fantastic. Ren's emotional struggles with the curse and kind of how he grows from it are so heartbreaking to read about, and you just really feel for him. And Scary Gray was a really fun character to read about, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next book. The ending of this book left me screaming for the next one, and I need it because this book really surprised me with how good it is, and I love it with my whole heart. Definitely a new favorite of mine. Next up on audio, I listened to I Darken by Kirsten White, and I listened to this because it was recommended to me by Majel. No one expects a princess to be brutal. Lorde and her brother Radu were stolen from their home of Wallachia and abandoned in the courts of the Ottoman Empire. Lorde despises the Ottomans and bides her time planning revenge, while Radu just wants a home to feel safe and secure. Everything is called into question when they befriend Mehmed, the heir to the Ottoman Empire, and enter into a toxic triangle. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I thought that it was a very cool historical fiction because it's a gender-bent retelling, but it also takes place in 1400s Ottoman Empire and Eastern Europe, which is not an era that really gets any sort of retellings in YA historical fiction, so it was really cool to learn more about the time period through the story. Lorde is probably the most brutal woman I have ever read about in my life, and she's so badass for it, but she's like scary brutal and just does the things that no one else will do because she's just that person that will do anything that it takes for power. And yet we get to see more of her emotional and softer side as well, but there's really not that much emotion. We also get to read about her struggles in trying to gain power as a woman in that time period, and how it was like virtually impossible, and just the way that men in power treat women that are trying to gain power, and how she keeps working for it and working for it, and she's always like, if I was a man this would be enough, but because I'm a woman it's not. and it's really, really interesting to read about. We also have Radu, who is a sensitive boy where the world expects hardened men. These siblings get drawn into a toxic triangle with Mehmed of friendship and love and everything in between. And I think that this book does a really good job of exploring the sibling dynamic and the push and the pull of Lorde and Radu's relationship, especially because they are so completely different. The story starts from when they are really young all the way up to like kind of where the momentum gets going in the Ottoman court. And I think it's a very interesting storytelling choice because we truly understand like why Lorde and Radu and Mehmed are the way that they are. And I think it was a really good choice for character development because you get to learn more about them. The only drawback I would say is that maybe it was a little bit slow, but I listened to it on audio and I listened to it on a fast speed, so that didn't deter me too much. Next up, I read Shatter Me by Tarada Mafi, and if you saw my May TBR, you know I'm fully ready to be trashed for the series. Juliet can kill with a touch. When she accidentally kills someone, she's arrested by the establishment and carted around from asylum to asylum. However, when they decide that they can use her as a weapon, she's taken from the prison and brought to be honed into something the re-establishment can use. However, Juliet is done playing by the rules of other people's games. One of the most interesting things about it is the very interesting structural choices in that Tarada Mafi uses a lot of strike-throughs to like kind of reflect what Juliet is going through, because in the beginning of this book she has been in isolation for almost a year, and I just think that like your thought patterns would definitely not be the same as a normal person's thought patterns, even if you are completely sane. If you have been in isolation for that long, not being able to talk to anyone and just kind of being in this dark cell all day, like your mind is going to be fractured. And I think that the structural choice really does a good job in portraying how you would be feeling and thinking if that happened to you. There's also a lot of run-on sentences and repetition of numbers, and obviously that is not because Tarada Mafi doesn't know how to write, it's because it was a choice to reflect Juliet's mindset, and I think it did really well. Just like I was reading it and I like the run-on sentences would run on and on and on, and you think of someone that kind of is like very anxious in the moment, and like they just like can't stop thinking and just like mind whirring around, and it makes sense for where her character is at. And then as you can see, kind of like as she starts to gain her grip back on her sanity, these kind of structural things slowly fade away, and that you can kind of see that her thought process is coming back to normal. And then when she gets stressed out, the strike-throughs, you know, get worse. So I think it's a really cool device to reflect the character's thoughts and feelings in the moment without outright saying it. The constant drama really keeps the plot moving forward, and it's just a lot of fun to read. I have not read a dystopian book in a while. I was never a big dystopian reader. Like I read The Hunger Games, I never read any other dystopians, and I read Scythe last year, and like that's about it. So I'm ready for this dystopian world because it's cool. There's powers, like Juliet can kill with a touch. That's a pretty unique premise. Like how would you feel if you could not touch anyone? Yeah, it's just like dramatic, fun, angsty, and I'm ready to be trashed for this entire series. The one drawback of this book that made it 4 out of 5 stars and a 5 out of 5 stars is I did feel like the side characters were lacking development, but it is a very strong start and I'm excited to see where it goes. After that, I read Destroy Me, which is Warner's novella, and it was in the back of my copy of Shatter Me, or you can get it in the Unite Me or whatever paperback, or just on your Kindle. I just read it in the back of the book. So in this novella, we basically get to see the events of Shatter Me from Warner's perspective. And in the first book, I know like everyone says they love Warner, and I was just so confused because in this first book, like he was kind of a psychopath. So I was like, am I reading the right book? But I'm assuming something's gonna happen. I don't know. We'll see in the next few books. Reading this novella, you can just see how messed up Warner's mind is. Like he has gone through some stuff. It was very intense. It was a pretty quick read, but like still I think it gave a lot of context to his character, and I think it's definitely essential part of the series, and it really intrigued me, so I'm excited to see where it's going. And I did not rate this one because I just decided not to rate novellas because I find that my rating system works well for novels, but these novellas are not always full-fledged stories. They're just kind of something to add on top of something else, so I don't want to really rate them. I just kind of want to enjoy them for what they are. Next up, I read Now I Rise by Kirsten White. I ended up giving this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. There were 2 different storylines in this book, and I loved Radu's storyline. He goes to Constantinople and is a spy, and his loyalties are tested. and there's just so much emotional growth that he goes through being on his own in the city. And if it was just Radu's storyline, I probably would have given it a 5 out of 5 stars. The thing that dragged it for me was Lorde's storyline. Like, I still enjoyed it, but it was too much political maneuvering for me and not enough emotional development for her, and I just felt like it really bogged down the storyline, that it was just straight up politics and not enough of her relationship dynamics between her and the other characters and stuff. Like, I don't know, it was very slow for me at points, and I mean, it wasn't bad, but it just like wasn't as good as Radu's chapters. And to me, when you have two different perspectives, if they're both not like the same level, it can drag the story for me. But as always, it's so richly detailed and well researched, and I do feel like I learned more about this time period while reading this book. And I will say that I think it is set up for an explosive finale. Like, I think the way that things were maneuvered in this book is setting up for the last book to be insane. So I'm looking forward to listening to that one in audio eventually. Next on audio, I listened to Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is a complete new favorite of mine. Daisy Jones and the Six was one of the most popular rock bands of the late 70s, but they mysteriously split at the height of their popularity, and no one knows why until now. Daisy Jones is coming to age in the 60s in LA, her life full of sex and drugs, and most importantly, rock and roll. By the time she's in her 20s, her voice is getting noticed. The Six are also rising in popularity, led by Billy Dunn, who finds out his girlfriend Camilla is pregnant on the first night of their tour and goes a little wild due to the pressures of fatherhood. When a producer decides to put the two together, the results are dynamite. The group skyrockets to popularity. And this novel is written as an oral history with interviews from all the characters. 5 out of 5 stars. Taylor Jenkins Reid has such a talent in creating real and raw characters. Like, I just felt like I could have closed the book and went on Spotify and looked up Daisy Jones and the Six and been able to listen to all of the songs. Like, it was just so realistic, and like the lyrics, the songwriting process, like all the things that these people were going through, I felt like I was listening to a real interview of real people. And you know, so shocked when I found out that they weren't real, but the same feeling that I had with Evelyn Hugo. I mean, like, she just captures the voice of each individual character so well that it's like phenomenal beyond any other modern writer that I'm aware of when it comes to these kinds of contemporary adult fiction books. There is just so much raw emotion put into the creative process of Daisy Jones and the Six as they're all writing their songs and all the things that are happening in all the band members' lives. And it was honestly just like a blast to read, and not gonna lie, I definitely teared up listening to the last little bit. And you know, I'd be down to reread this one physically soon because I feel like I need it in my life. Like, it was just such a great book, and I definitely feel like it's going to leave a lasting impression on me. And last up in April, I read Godsgrave by J. Kristoff, and this was a buddy read with Madison over at Princess of Paperback. And just I am so rarely left completely speechless by a book, but this book stunned me in ways I was not even anticipating. This is book number 2 in the Nevernight Chronicles. Mia Corvair is the daughter of an executed traitor in a land where the 3 sons almost never set. She becomes an apprentice in the Red Church, the world's deadliest groups of assassins for hire, and she is bent on exacting revenge on those that murdered her family. And I won't go too in detail onto what happens in this book because it's a real cool surprise when you see the setting of this one going into it. I mean, 5 out of 5 stars. Literally so amazing. Nevernight Chronicles has to be one of my new favorite series. Like, this writing is top notch. It's so freaking good. Like, I just cannot find the words. I think the best plot twists are the ones that you get little hints sprinkled here and there, and you think you know something, and then what you know is taken on its head and completely turned around, and you are completely flabbergasted because the last 10 pages of this book blew my freaking mind. I think reading about Mia as a character is just so interesting. We really see the struggle that she goes through to go to these lengths to get revenge for her family that was brutally murdered in front of her when she was a kid, and she just like learns so many secrets about her family and herself and how she deals with them, and like the relationships that she develops with the other characters, and like how she just goes on this journey of life. Like, it is so good. It's so good. And again, J. Kristoff, this series is known for having these like little footnotes, and also like the beginning of the book flashes back and forth between present and past, and these are really interesting structural choices that I think that really just like add such a depth to the world. And I think that there is some sort of like mystery narrator that we'll find out in the third book that is actually like writing this book and putting in like the snarky little footnotes. So I'm so excited for Dark Dawn, and this book is just like, in this series, it's just everything to me. It is so fantastic, and please pick it up if you have not yet. Okay, those are the books that I read in April. Please let me know if you've read any of these books below, or let me know what you read in April and what your favorite read of the month was. Have some fun, read some books, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.